Here we are today, welcoming you to this ceremony. The lambs here are Jonathan and Marcus, not Joy and Marcus. I was wondering if you could share your age with the world, Jonathan. Here today we will celebrate anything having to do with Pete. Had we possessed all that? My father had predicted that I would succeed him as president. Hey there. You've found Faith Unfiltered, a channel that brings together genuine faith and storytelling. You're familiar with Dyer, aren't we? The massively profitable Christian television network. All right then. To brighten your day, here is an interview with Jonathan. The plan was for Jonathan Lamb to succeed his father, Marcus, who had established Dyer from the bottom up. Definitely not in the future. There was a record of everything. Yeah. Oh my God. It was not just family chat. A complete plan was drafted, signed, and sealed as if it were an official document. Jonathan wasn't your average cubicle dweller. It seemed as if he had been hand-picked. His father. According to Marcus's original plan, Jonathan would succeed Marcus as president of Dyer. It stood out. Neither a secret handshake nor a verbal vow were involved. Color was not present. When discussing a media empire worth $1 billion, that is a significant matter. However, things become intriguing and somewhat chaotic at this point. Everything was set up for Jonathan to take over, but things didn't work out that way. A shift occurred. Participation was high. Behind closed doors, decisions were taken. And just like that, Jonathan was no longer involved. So let's go to the present day. At last, Jonathan and Susie made up their minds to have a conversation. A genuine, forthright interview took place. Excessive media hype, no sugar. Concealment, only honesty. And believe me when I say this, you were never supposed to hear this side of the tale. That's all they're saying. The chain reaction that began with a presidential pledge and ended with its rejection, along with the sensations it evoked, but what transpired in reality? All the information, the documents, the schedule. They were really forthright. Susie wasn't silent either. She spoke up. Throughout it all, she has been by Jonathan's side. Think about being deprived of a promise so substantial, something that your entire family believed was secured, once it had been extended to them. This goes beyond mere commerce, because it is an intimate matter. I'm impressed. And that is precisely the situation they are faced with. They clearly aren't doing this for the limelight, either. All they want is for the truth to be known. It wasn't about ego or money. They want everyone to know that. A promise was being honored, a legacy was being continued, and doing what is proper. They were forthright about their anguish, shock, and the anguish of being removed from something that had immense significance for both them and their father, who had passed away. This is more than just a business tale. It's about a family. A tale of aspirations, treachery, and, at last, the truth is being revealed. A lengthy story is floating around. Oh, I see. They're wealthy beyond belief. This ministry funded by multiple $1 million employed them. How has this impacted your finances? How has it affected your financial situation? My pay was really substantial when I was the vice president of JAR. Exactly the year 23? My goodness. Of 22. Did you get that large bump at that time? Prior to that, everything was typical for the year 2023. In other words, it remained a nice no. Yeah. No, but it was huge in 2022. A whole year as the vice president. Yeah. Our hearts sank. Wow! We exclaimed. People would rather pretend that a mortgage payment is still due. Yeah. Still have to pay the bills that came with that lavish lifestyle you had when your salary was much higher. Because he became president before I did, both of us experienced a bump in 22. All of our preparations finally paid off when we were in our 22nd year after he went away. Not only did I get a very excellent pay, but Jonathan did as well. You would think that would be the time to be enticed to stay, but the opposite was true. I begged God, when will Jonathan be ready? During the climax of our wrestling match. This house is ready to be sold. I'm prepared to start over. Their lives took a dramatic turn in 2022. The Daystar TV network's founder, Marcus Lamb, who was Jonathan's dad, has passed away. Going forward, Jonathan volunteered to take on the role of vice president. A glimmer of hope emerged at last. The salary was satisfactory. Susie was also given a rise. They weren't only surviving anymore, which was a significant change. Their airways were open. Life felt stable and safe, as if perhaps, just perhaps, their hardships had ended. However, that calm did not persist. In the span of a year, that sense of financial security came and went. Oh, they're a part of Daystar, some may assume. I assume they're loaded. Now Susie has admitted that she has been underpaid compared to someone working at a coffee shop for years. She had no problem with that either. Raising their family was more important to her than making a fortune. Despite everything they had given up, they felt that all their hard work had paid off, and now was the moment to settle down. Being the son didn't automatically make Jonathan the next leader of Dyer. It was formalized when his father put it in writing. Presumably, Jonathan was to succeed Barack Obama as president. It had been certain. It was as though all the years they had devoted to Dyer, the prayers, the trust, the hope, had paid off. It didn't, though. The formal papers, the pledge, and the plan were all disregarded. The current head of Daystar, Johnny Lamb, disregarded the original intent. To top it all off, he went on record as saying that Jonathan and Susie's departure was due only to their disappointment in not being named CO. Unfortunately, that isn't the whole tale. It wasn't like Jonathan and Susie quit only for financial or title-related reasons. When they realized they couldn't keep up the facade of normalcy, they departed. The truth and the agony were too much for them to ignore. Look, something terrible transpired. One member of the family had a job at. Their 5-year-old daughter was allegedly harmed by Dyer, a man named Pete. People seemed more concerned with ignoring the issue, sweeping it under the rug, and keeping a straight face for the cameras than with bringing those responsible to justice. The fact that Johnny Lamb remarried to Doug Weiss, a sex therapist, only heightened Jonathan and Susie's suspicions. They were instructed to maintain composure, pretend that everything was all right, and smile broadly. And if they had complied, kept quiet, and gone along with the plan, they could have retained everything. All the perks, the title, the cash, the limelight, and still they failed miserably. Jonathan asserted that, without ambiguity, they sacrificed all in the name of truth. That is more than just flowery language. Truly, they relinquished all. The promised billions, employment, platform, and future. For the sake of their own survival, they let it all go. Untrue statement. And I must say, that is quite courageous. A lot of individuals would be quite possessive of their wealth and power. Except for Jonathan and Susie, of course. They opted for the right choice rather than the easiest one. Comfort was sacrificed for truth. Even though it was expensive, they felt it was the right move because they said, "All right, let's talk." Jonathan and Susie Lamb's names may have been floating around recently. One of the largest Christian media networks, Dyer, was reportedly left behind when they left. Perhaps you even grinned and thought, "Wow, that was brave." Yeah, that's right. That being said, the majority of individuals are unaware of this. Choices like that aren't made lightly. By a wide margin. That year, 2022, it looked like. Seems to be coming together for Jonathan and Susie at last. Jonathan became Dyer's vice president following the death of his father, Marcus Lamb. His ascension to the presidency was the intended outcome. It wasn't taken for granted. The document was formal, with a signature and a date. I could see the way ahead. They appeared to be at the point where all their hard work was paying off. Now came the payoff after years of silent service, dedication, and faithfulness. A substantial salary was provided with the promotion. Their financial concerns subsided for the first time in a long time. A rise was even bestowed onto Susie. They weren't splurging, but at least they weren't surviving. Their airways were open. Things began to settle into a routine. Finally, they weren't merely surviving, they were thriving. They were emotionally and financially stable. Everything looked to be in order. And now for the catch. Things weren't quite right on the inside, even though they appeared to be perfect on the surface. Susie described this peculiar unease, a sort of spiritual turmoil. As if God was gently nudging her heart, trying to convey that something wasn't quite right, even though she was unable to articulate it completely. Therefore, she began to pray for clarity rather than wealth, fame, or ease. "Please, God, show me a way out of this if you do not want us to be here, and if this is not your will," she prayed. "I'm prepared to give up the house, the money, and the comforts of it all. If you desire that, I can provide it." Prayers like those aren't easy. The majority of people would refuse to let go of the life they've grown accustomed to. But not. Hello, Susie. Additionally, Jonathan was dealing with his own personal conflict. Staying would provide him with security, he knew. It indicated a future with all the details already set. On the other hand, it entailed keeping silent when something wasn't right. It entailed ignoring issues that were at odds with their principles. His inability to do that was evident. You see, something tragic occurred in their family. Someone connected to the family who works at Dyer was accused of. Unpleasant for their daughter, who is 5 years old. It hurt and shocked them, but no one responded when they tried to speak up and do anything about it. Keeping the peace, maintaining the integrity of the brand, and acting for the cameras seemed to be everyone's top priorities. After that, another thing arose. Current Dyer president Johnny Lamb remarried. A sex therapist by the name of Doug Weiss became his new bride. Jonathan and Susie had emotional and spiritual concerns about the relationship. It was assumed that they would grin, be silent, and continue. They could have had it all if they had merely complied, smiled at cue, and remained silent. The entire platform, including titles, funds, and influence. Jonathan was spot on. In search of the truth, we sacrificed all. It was more than just a lovely line. They would have to accept it as fact. Forsook everything. Their positions, their salary, their future, and even their status in the public eye due to their inability to maintain deceit. They couldn't do it because it would have hurt their child, their faith, or their conscience. They left behind ease, authority, and what appeared to be an assured future. And they did it without resentment or finger-pointing. They weren't resentful when they finally spoke out. Their voice lacked animosity. On the contrary, calm prevailed. A serene tranquility. The kind that can only be achieved when one is truly convinced that they have made the right choice, regardless of the consequences. They slept well that night because it wasn't a decision that would make them rich. At night, they were able to look their daughter in the eyes because of it. It was the type that enabled them to maintain their faith. True faith seems like that. Deciding not to constantly seek attention. You don't have to go up every time. When something doesn't sit right with you spiritually, even though it appears ideal on paper, true faith sometimes requires letting go and moving on. The tale of Jonathan and Suze goes beyond the resignation from a prominent position. The lesson here is to keep going even when the environment around you tells you to stop. Choosing integrity over appearance and conviction over convenience are key. Putting your faith in God rather than the system is the key. They refrained from assigning blame. Nobody threw a stone at them. A scandal was not caused by them. All they do is departed with tranquility, reliance, and conviction. In addition, guess what? Such a choice makes an impression. Simply said, it is true, and not just because it is loud. And such reality is uncommon in this modern environment. In that case, what is your opinion? Would you have gone with the identical decision? Are you willing to risk losing everything you've ever worked for in order to follow your values? Feel free to share your opinions down below. Your opinion is much appreciated. On top of that, please consider giving this story a like, sharing it, and subscribing to the channel if it had any impact on you. More is on the way for you. All ears are appreciated.